The sound of shattering echoed through the empty penthouse, like a belated funeral. When Paul pushed open that heavy walnut door, I was swinging an axe I dug out from the storage room, striking precisely at the 2-meter-tall wedding photo hanging in the entryway. It was taken by the Italian seaside 5 years ago. In the photo, I was smiling like a naive believer while he was kissing my forehead, his eyes hiding an affection as deep as the ocean. Bang! The tempered glass wailed under the axe blade, tiny crystals scattering onto the wool carpet, making a soft, rustling sound. "Nicole, what the hell are you doing?" Paul's voice was as calm as ever, carrying a lofty weariness. He casually loosened his tie, didn't even quicken his pace, as if I was just breaking some insignificant porcelain bowl. I didn't look back, swinging the axe again with a backhand strike, splitting his handsome face in the photo in half. The sound of the canvas tearing was extremely harsh, yet it gave me a sick sense of satisfaction. The divorce papers are on the bar. Sign them, then take your America's sweetheart and get the hell out of my sight. I turned around, the tip of the axe resting on the floor, making a teeth-grinding, scraping sound. Paul finally stopped what he was doing. He looked at the mess all over the floor, then looked at me. I was wearing a bright red silk gown today, the color he hated most. He said a pianist should always be as cool and serene as moonlight, not so glaring. Just because Sofia wore that necklace at the premiere? He let out a cold laugh, stepped closer, trying to intimidate me with that all-controlling demeanor of his. I've explained it so many times. It was just a brand PR requirement for the movie's buzz. Nicole, you're a talented woman from Juilliard. Don't act like some uneducated shrew. Buzz? I curled my lips in self-mockery. Then posting that photo of you two in front of the fireplace at the Aspen cabin on her private social media account. Was that also for buzz? On my birthday, you said you were at a board meeting in Silicon Valley, but there you were in that photo, feeding her hot cocoa. Paul's brows furrowed slightly, a hint of offended displeasure. That was last winter, and you're still digging it up now. Sofia was in a really bad state back then. She has depression. I was just doing my duty as a friend. You know perfectly well that if she hadn't helped my family during that crisis, we wouldn't even be living in this apartment now. This excuse again. This excuse has been like a binding spell, shackling my marriage for 5 whole years. Because Sofia was once a benefactor to his family, she could intrude into our lives whenever and wherever she wanted, call in the middle of the night to cry and complain, demand he go to the set to keep her company on our anniversary. And I had to be magnanimous, had to be dignified, had to be a wife as quiet as a piece of art. Enough. I cut him off, walked over to the bar counter and lit a match. I threw the custom-bound wedding album into the fireplace beside me. Flames instantly licked up those expensive photos, black smoke rising, carrying a pungent chemical smell. Paul's face finally changed. He rushed over trying to grab me. "You're crazy. That has the only set of master negatives. Things that are destroyed don't need backups." I pushed him away, with a strength that surprised even myself. Just then, my phone started vibrating violently on the bar counter. It was an unknown number. I pressed the answer button. A trembling voice from the moving company's customer service came through. "Excuse me, is this Ms. Nicole? We're very sorry to inform you that there was an accident with your pet transport, the dwarf rabbit named Luna. Due to cargo hold temperature control system failure, before arrival it already showed no vital signs. In that instant, the world seemed to go silent. Luna. That was my only companion during the darkest days of my marriage. Paul didn't like animals. He said the fur would dirty his haute couture suits, so I could only keep it in the greenhouse on the terrace. Whenever Paul stayed out all night, whenever I cried through the night because of those scandals, only that little ball of fluff would nuzzle my fingertips. This morning, when I decided to leave, the first thing I did was contact the most expensive pet shipping service, wanting to send it ahead to the safe haven I had arranged. Nicole? What's wrong? Paul noticed something off about me and reached out to touch my shoulder. I violently swatted his hand away. The tears in my eyes had completely dried up at this moment. In their place was a flame of extreme coldness. "It's dead," I said softly. "What?" "Luna is dead because you insisted I go to that damn charity gala last night, insisted I play along with your loving couple act. I missed the flight I originally booked and had to reschedule the shipping to today." I stared at him dead on, enunciating every word. "Paul, you destroyed the last bit of hope I had left." Paul froze for a moment, then showed an almost absurd expression. "You mean that rabbit? Nicole, don't tell me you've caused all this drama, even wanting a divorce just because of a rabbit. I can compensate you with 100 of them, or 1,000. As long as you like, I can buy the entire breeding facility." This is the man I loved for 10 years. He can calculate every cent of stock fluctuation, but can never calculate a person's heartbreak. No, you can't buy it. I picked up the divorce agreement from the bar counter and threw it directly in his face. "You can't buy me anymore either. From this second on, Nicole Bennett is no longer your plaything, no longer your piano shield." I grabbed the simple travel bag I had prepared long ago and strode toward the front door. "Where are you going? Your trust fund, your concert sponsorship, and your mother's nursing home fees. Leave me and you won't get a single cent." He roared behind me, a fit of rage from wounded pride. I stopped, turned my head slightly, and flashed an extremely gorgeous smile. "Paul, you forgot. Before I married you, I was a genius who won the gold medal at the International Chopin Piano Competition. As for that money, if you still want Paul Tech's stock price not to hit the limit down, you'd better pray I never send those wonderful videos of Sofia to the media." His face instantly turned deathly pale. How do you have them?" "You think I've just been practicing piano these 5 years?" I pushed open the door, and the cold wind of late-night Manhattan rushed in, making me feel clearer than ever before. "Goodbye, Mr. Ex-Husband. Hope your sweetheart can cure your narcissism." I walked into the elevator without looking back. The late night highway was like an endless black river. I drove aimlessly until the fuel gauge warning came on. When I stopped at a remote gas station, I looked up and saw a small dot on the map, a nameless seaside town where my grandmother had left a property that had been abandoned for a long time. I turned off my phone, pulled out the SIM card, and tossed it into a nearby trash can. 5 hours later, I heard the sound of waves crashing against the rocks. The sea here wasn't that pretentious azure blue of Italy, but carried a deep, somber gray, like a massive, uncarved block of lead. I found the little house perched on the edge of the cliff. Pushing the door open, dust danced in the air. I walked over to the grand piano draped in a dusty cloth and pulled off the white sheet. The keys had yellowed somewhat, but the moment my fingers touched them, the sound that emerged was still crisp and defiant. Just then, soft footsteps came from outside the door. An elderly woman with a head full of silver hair, wearing an elegant floral dress, stood at the doorway. She had a basket on her arm, her gaze somewhat unfocused, yet the moment she saw me, her eyes lit up with an astonishing brilliance. "Xiao Yan, is that you? You've finally come back." She walked over trembling and grabbed my hand tightly. I froze. My name isn't Xiao Yan, but I could feel what was transmitted through those withered hands, a longing and tenderness so intense it could almost burn. "Mama has been waiting for you for so long. Is it cold outside? Come, I brought you freshly baked blueberry pie." She pulled me toward the house next door without giving me a chance to refuse. I should have refused, should have explained. But after experiencing a whole night of betrayal, destruction, and death, I craved this misplaced warmth. I let her lead me into that courtyard filled with blooming hydrangeas. And in the shadows of the courtyard, a man in a black suit stood quietly, his figure tall and straight. He held a coat in his hands, and his originally cold eyes flickered with a hint of surprise when he saw me being led by the old woman, then shifted into something inquisitive. "Mother, she's not—" The man spoke, his voice deep and magnetic, like the low hum of a cello. "No, Adrian, this is your sister. Look at her eyes, they're exactly the same." The old woman shielded me excitedly, as if I might vanish at any moment. The man called Adrian approached. He carried a restrained aura unique to those in power, far more profound than Paul's aggressive flamboyance. He scrutinized me carefully, his gaze lingering on my wrist, where a faint red mark remained from smashing things last night. He was silent for a moment, then gave the old woman a gentle smile. "Yes, Mother. She's back. You can go prepare dinner now." Once the old woman cheerfully walked into the house, the tenderness in Adrian's eyes instantly faded, replaced by scrutiny. "Who are you? Why are you in this house that's been abandoned for 10 years? I straightened my back, met his gaze, and spoke with composure. "I'm the owner of this house, Nicole. As for your mother's misidentification, I'm sorry. I was just too tired to refuse a kind gesture." Adrian looked at me. Then suddenly he noticed the corner of a crumpled divorce agreement peeking out of my travel bag and the scent of ashes on my skirt hem that hadn't fully dissipated. "Nicole." He murmured my name, the corner of his lips curling into an amused arc. "After causing such a scene in New York and fleeing here, do you think this place can hide you from Paul's private investigators, or do you think this neighbor of yours is some pushover philanthropist?" My heart lurched. He knew who I was, but he showed no malice, instead reaching out to take my heavy luggage bag. "Welcome to this corner that even God has nearly forgotten. Since my mother has claimed you, until you figure out your next move, you'll be my sister. Of course, in return—" He pointed at the piano in my room. My mother hasn't heard decent piano music in a long time. I looked at him, then toward the cold, crisp dawn rising over the sea. I knew my new life would begin with this misaligned concerto. Adrian settled me into a guest room in the Manor's side wing. The room's furnishings were simple, yet exuded casual luxury everywhere. Handcrafted linen bedding, unknown impressionist originals hanging on the walls, and the endless Atlantic Ocean outside the window. I didn't rest right away, but sat in the rocking chair by the window, watching the lighthouse signal flickering on and off in the distance. My phone had been off the whole time, but I could imagine New York was already in chaos because of my disappearance. Paul was someone who cared extremely about face, especially in front of those Wall Street old foxes waiting to see him make a fool of himself. My departure wasn't a breakdown of feelings to him, but an uncontrollable risk on his balance sheet. Knock, knock. The door was knocked softly. It was Adrian. He had changed into a casual cashmere sweater with less of the oppressive presence from the courtyard, yet still carrying an undeniable sense of distance. "My mother is asleep." He handed me a cup of hot coffee. "She hasn't slept this peacefully in a long time. The doctor said her Alzheimer's is getting worse, but tonight she looked like she'd gone back 10 years. I'm sorry." I took the coffee, my fingertips touching the warmth of the cup, a long-forgotten, real warmth. I shouldn't have pretended to be her daughter. "No, you don't need to apologize." Adrian walked to the window, looking at the distant sea. "If this could make her happy even for just a second, then it's worth it. As for who you are, why you fled New York, that's your private matter. In this estate, the only rule is, don't make my mother cry." I looked at his profile. This man was completely different from Paul. Paul was like a flame constantly burning, eager to prove his heat to the world, while Adrian was more like this sea, deep, reserved, yet containing an even more terrifying power. "You know who I am," I stated. Former Juilliard prodigy, current, or soon-to-be former wife of a tech nouveau riche. Adrian turned his head, a hint of inquiry in his eyes. Last night, Paul Tech's stock dropped 5% in after-hours trading because there were rumors that you, the company's important cultural figurehead, had gone missing. I sneered. Looks like I'm worth more than I thought. That's the essence of marriage, Nicole. In this circle, it's a contract first, feelings second. He paused. But I'm curious, what made you decide to tear up this contract worth hundreds of millions at this moment? I set down my coffee cup and walked over to the piano. It was a Steinway with some years on it with a small inscription engraved on the lid, "To my little lark." Because I've realized that some things are more important than hundreds of millions of dollars. I pressed a key, and a crisp high note pierced the morning silence. Like dignity. Like a dead rabbit. Adrian raised an eyebrow, seemingly a bit surprised by this answer. But he didn't press further, just pointed at the piano. Then play. Let me hear what music worth hundreds of millions of dollars actually sounds like. I took a deep breath, my fingertips dancing across the keys. Not those Chopin nocturnes I'd practiced to please dinner party guests, but a passionate Rachmaninoff piece, full of fury and sorrow. Music is honest. Every note was an accusation, a release. I seemed to see that night buried by the blizzard, see that rabbit slowly losing warmth in the cargo hold, see myself desperately practicing smiles in front of the mirror, trying to please my husband. When the piece ended, I was already drenched in sweat. The room fell into a long silence. Adrian stood there, his gaze becoming unusually deep. No wonder. He finally spoke, his voice a bit hoarse. No wonder Paul kept you hidden at those dinner parties that were nothing but showing off wealth. He didn't understand your music at all. Just then, hurried footsteps came from outside the door. An elderly woman who looked like a housekeeper rushed in frantically. "Young master, this is bad, Mrs. Vance. After she woke up, she's been looking for Xiaoyan and nothing can calm her down. She's running toward the cliff right now." Adrian's expression changed, and he immediately rushed out. I didn't hesitate either, following behind him. The wind by the sea was fierce, almost making it impossible to stand steady. When we reached the edge of the cliff, we saw Mrs. Vance standing barefoot on the rocks, waves crashing against the hem of her dress, threatening to sweep her away at any moment. "Xiaoyan, where are you? Mommy made you blueberry pie. Come back quickly!" She cried out to the sea, her voice shrill and mournful. Adrian tried to approach, but she stopped him with a shout. "Don't come any closer! You're a bad person! You're the one who took my Xiaoyan away! Give her back to me!" Obviously, her condition had flared up, and she couldn't even recognize her own son. Adrian froze in place, helplessness appearing on his usually composed face for the first time. I looked at that old woman trembling in the wind, and my heart felt like it was struck hard by something. I thought of my own mother, that woman who only ever called to ask me, "Why haven't you sent this month's living expenses yet?" Who only ever cursed me out for not wearing the jewelry she specified 2 events. If my mother could love me like this, even just once. I pushed Adrian aside and walked toward the rocks, step by step. "Mom." I spoke, my voice somewhat fragmented by the sea breeze. "I'm here." Mrs. Vance's whole body trembled, and she slowly turned her head. The moment her gaze touched mine, it shifted from madness to incredulous joy. "Xiaoyan? It's me. I just went to practice piano, did you forget?" I tried to make my voice sound calm and gentle. "The blueberry pie won't taste good once it gets cold. Let's go back and eat it, okay?" She stared at me fixedly for a few seconds, then like a child who had done something wrong, cautiously reached out her hand. "Really? You didn't leave?" "I didn't leave. I'll never leave again." I grasped her ice-cold hand and pulled her back from the edge of the reef. In that instant, I felt a gaze from behind, locking tightly onto me. It was Adrian. After returning to the manor, Mrs. Vance finally calmed down, ate a few bites of blueberry pie, and then fell into a deep sleep. I stayed by her bedside until her breathing became steady. When I walked out of the bedroom, Adrian was leaning against the corridor wall, smoking. Through the swirling smoke, his expression was somewhat blurred. "Thank you," he said. "It was nothing." No, this wasn't nothing. He stubbed out his cigarette, walked over, and for the first time looked at me as an equal. The doctor said if no one had been able to calm her down just now, the consequences would have been unimaginable. "Nicole, you saved her life?" I shook my head. "Actually, she saved me. In this world, besides this piano, no one has needed me this much in a long time." Adrian was silent for a moment, then suddenly pulled out an envelope from his pocket and handed it to me. "What's this?" "A rental contract." He curled his lips. "Since you're going to live here, you need a legitimate reason. I'm hiring you as my mother's music therapist, room and board included, salary. Name your price. The only condition is, when she's lucid, you're her daughter Xiaoyan." I looked at that envelope and suddenly found it somewhat amusing. Just escaped from a contract called marriage, and now I'm signing another one? What if I refuse? "Then you can leave right now. However, I should remind you, Paul's private jet has already landed at Portland Airport. Without my protection, within 3 hours, you'll be dragged back to New York by him." I suddenly looked up. He's here. His need for control is even stronger than you imagine, and Adrian's gaze turned slightly cold. He brought a legal team, and that America's sweetheart, Sofia. Looks like he's planning to use both the carrot and the stick. Sofia came too, that woman who just won't go away. At that moment, all the fear and hesitation dissipated from my heart. What replaced them was a do-or-die determination. I took the envelope, tore open the seal, pulled out a pen from inside, and signed my name at the end of the contract. Deal. I looked at Adrian. "But I have a condition, too." "Speak." "I don't just want to be a music therapist." A cold glint flashed in my eyes. "I want to borrow your influence. Since he's chased me all the way here, don't blame me for being ruthless. I want him to know that without him, not only can I survive, I can live so well that he won't be able to reach me." Adrian looked at me, a hint of amusement surfacing deep in his eyes. It was the kind of excitement you feel when seeing a kindred spirit, when watching prey about to strike back. "Good." He extended his hand. "Pleasure working together, my little sister." That night, a sudden storm swept across all of Bar Harbor. The estate's power system tripped amid the thunder, and everything around plunged into darkness. I was fumbling in the dark trying to light a candle when I heard a piercing screech of brakes from outside the front gate. A beam of bright light pierced through the curtain of rain, shining directly onto the living room's floor-to-ceiling windows. The car door opened, and a tall, slender figure stepped out holding a black umbrella. Lightning streaked across the night sky, illuminating his handsome yet gloomy face. Paul. He stood in the rain, his gaze sharp as a hawk's, piercing through the darkness, accurately catching me standing on the second-floor balcony. "Nicole." His voice sounded somewhat distorted in the thunderstorm. "Had enough of your tantrum? If you're done, come home with me." And in the passenger seat behind him, the car window slowly rolled down, revealing Sofia's face, still exquisitely perfect even on a rainy night. She looked at me, a hint of barely perceptible mockery at the corner of her lips. I gripped the railing tightly, my knuckles turning white. Just then, a men's suit jacket carrying a faint scent of tobacco was draped over my shoulders. Adrian had appeared behind me at some point, one arm around my shoulders, the other hand casually toying with that lighter. "I think you might have gotten something wrong, Mr. Paul." Adrian's voice wasn't loud, yet it was clearly audible in the rainy night. "There's no wife of yours here, only my family." He lowered his head and whispered in my ear, "Ready? The show's about to begin." I looked at the man downstairs. the one I once loved to death, took a deep breath, and let a smile even colder than this rainy night spread across my face. "Ready," I said. Adrian's arm was steady, and that suit jacket carried his body warmth, becoming the only shield in this cold, damp, rainy night. Paul clearly hadn't expected there to be a man by my side. His originally composed stride faltered for a moment, the black umbrella tilting slightly, revealing those eyes instantly ignited with fury. "Who are you?" he demanded, his voice carrying its usual arrogance, as if the entire world should submit under his scrutiny. "This is private property, Mr. Paul." Adrian didn't answer, just raised his chin slightly, gesturing toward the security team, patrolling not far away with their warning lights flashing. "According to Maine state law, for trespassing on private property without permission, I have the right to use any necessary means to expel you or even defend myself." "Defend yourself?" Paul sounded like he'd heard some kind of joke. He strode up the steps, his leather shoes making dull thuds on the slick marble. "I'm here to take my wife home. Nicole, don't tell me you ran away from home for 2 days just to find some random man to back you up. That's so low class, doesn't suit your taste." His words lashed across my face like a whip. That was Paul, always able to attack my weak spots with the most vicious words at the first opportunity. In his eyes, I was probably just an accessory that occasionally threw tantrums and needed to be disciplined. "Random man?" I sneered coldly, stepping out of Adrian's arms to stand at the edge of the terrace, looking down at him from above. "If we're following that logic, what's the one in the car? Your personal pet?" Sofia in the car seemed to have heard. She pushed open the car door and stepped out, putting on a delicate act. The rain soaked her trench coat, making her look even more pitifully fragile. "Nicole, please don't misunderstand." Her voice carried a tearful tone, as if she'd suffered some terrible grievance. "Paul was just worried about you. We've been looking for you for 2 whole days. Look, to find you, I even pushed back tomorrow's schedule." "Shut up!" I cut her off sharply. "There are no cameras here, and I'm not one of your brain-dead fans, so save your acting." Paul frowned deeply, clearly displeased with my harshness. "Nicole, Sofia is looking out for you. Do you know how much damage your behavior has caused the company? The board is already very unhappy. If you come back with me now, I can pretend this never happened." "Pretend it never happened?" I laughed out of sheer anger. "Paul, have you lost your memory? Do I need to remind you what happened that night in Aspen?" At the mention of Aspen, Paul's expression changed almost imperceptibly. That was the biggest taboo in our marriage, and the deepest scar in my heart. Last winter, I was 3 months pregnant. It was a child we had long awaited. Paul suggested we go skiing in Aspen, saying it was to celebrate the arrival of new life. But when we got there, I discovered Sofia was there too. She said she was there to shoot snow scenery photos and just happened to be staying in the cabin next door. That day, a blizzard hit, and the entire valley was locked down. Sofia suddenly called saying she had sprained her ankle on the back mountain and couldn't move. Without a second word, Paul grabbed the car keys and headed for the door. "She just sprained her ankle. We can wait for the rescue team." I held him back. The wind and snow outside were terrifyingly strong. Besides, I'm showing signs of miscarriage. The doctor said I shouldn't be stressed. "She'll freeze to death alone in the snow. Nicole, can you stop being so selfish?" He shook off my hand, his tone full of impatience. "The rescue team won't be here for another 2 hours. I'll take the SUV to pick her up. I'll be back soon." He drove away in the only SUV, leaving me alone in that rickety wooden cabin. Shortly after he left, the cabin's electrical system collapsed because the accumulated snow had snapped the power lines. The heating stopped, and the indoor temperature plummeted. I tried to call him, but only got the automated message. "The number you have dialed is currently busy." I knew it. He was comforting the frightened Sofia. I shivered in the darkness and cold, the dragging pain in my abdomen growing more and more intense. I wanted to go to the storage room to find the backup generator, but I missed my footing on the icy stairs. Scalding liquid flowed down my thighs, staining the white wool carpet red. In that moment, I stared desperately at the raging blizzard outside the window, feeling life slipping away bit by bit. When I woke up again, I was in a hospital bed. The doctor told me the baby was gone. And Paul, he only rushed over after my surgery was finished. He still carried that sickeningly sweet perfume scent of Sofia's, holding my hand with a face full of guilt as he said, "I'm sorry, the snow was too heavy. The car got stuck on the road. Sofia was terrified. I had to calm her down first." After that, I never mentioned that child again, because I knew in his heart my life and the child's life combined weren't worth as much as one of Sofia's sprains. That was an accident. Paul's voice interrupted my memories. He seemed to have realized something too, his tone softening slightly. The situation was urgent back then. An accident? I looked at him, my eyes ice cold. Then you bringing her to find me now, is that also an accident? Or do you think only by bringing her along can you prove your deep affection, prove that even on the way to find your wife, you don't forget to bring your little side piece? "I was worried you'd do something stupid alone," Paul said somewhat angrily. "Sofia majored in psychology. She can counsel you." "Psychology major?" Adrian suddenly cut in, letting out a contemptuous laugh. "From what I know, Miss Sofia's degree was obtained through correspondence courses at a diploma mill, and her credentials were revoked for plagiarizing her thesis. Mr. Paul, don't you think it's time to update your intel network?" Paul and Sofia both froze at the same time. Sofia's face instantly turned deathly pale. She stared fixedly at Adrian, seemingly wondering who this man really was and how he could know such hidden dirt. "Who the hell are you?" Paul demanded again, this time with a hint of wariness. "I am the owner of this estate, and also Nicole's current employer." Adrian stepped in front of me, blocking Paul's gaze. "As her employer, I have an obligation to protect my employee from harassment. Now please leave immediately, or I will have my lawyer sue you for stalking and trespassing." Paul clenched his jaw, obviously unwilling to just leave like this, but he glanced at the security personnel gradually surrounding them, then at Adrian's fearless demeanor, and in the end, reason prevailed. "Fine, very well." He gave me a long, hard look. "Nicole, you'd better think carefully about what you're doing. Without me, you're nothing. Without my sponsorship, you won't get anywhere in the music industry." With that, he turned and got back into the car. Sofia also glared at me fiercely before climbing into the passenger seat. The headlights cut through the curtain of rain, quickly disappearing into the darkness. Only when the taillights completely vanished from sight did I feel my legs go weak, nearly collapsing to the ground. Adrian caught me with quick reflexes. "Are you okay?" I shook my head, only to realize my whole body was trembling. It was anger, and also lingering fear. "Thank you," I said softly. "No need to thank me. I told you this is a partnership." Adrian let go and turned to walk inside. "Come in. It's cold outside. My mother saved some hot soup for you." Back in the warm indoors, Mrs. Vance had already gone to bed. On the dining table sat a bowl of chicken soup still steaming, with a note beside it, written in crooked handwriting. "Little Yan, drink soup, don't cry." My tears burst like a dam in that instant. Adrian sat across from me, quietly watching me cry. He didn't hand me tissues, nor did he offer words of comfort, just quietly kept me company like that, as if my tears were something that didn't need to be judged. "Done crying?" He only spoke after I finally stopped sobbing. I nodded, somewhat embarrassedly wiping my face. "If you're done crying, let's get to work." He pulled out a tablet from behind him. "If we're going to fight back, we need some real ammunition. This is some information I had people dig up on Sofia. I think you'll find it interesting." I took the tablet, fingers swiping across the screen. The more I looked, the more shocked I became. It turned out Sofia's so-called mental health issues were completely fabricated. All her depression diagnoses were bought, with the purpose of gaining sympathy and covering up the fact that she had interfered in other people's marriages multiple times. She was even suspected of using charity funds for money laundering. These are all real? The Chen Group's intelligence network never makes mistakes. Adrian said nonchalantly, "So, is this blade sharp enough?" Looking at the ironclad evidence on the screen, an unprecedented feeling of satisfaction welled up in my heart. Enough. I lifted my head, flames of revenge flickering in my eyes. But this isn't enough. I want them to fall hard just when they think they're about to reach the top. Over the next few days, peace returned to the manor. During the day, I accompanied Mrs. Vance playing piano and taking walks, playing the role of an obedient daughter. At night, I hid in my room, plotting the coming storm with Adrian. Adrian was an excellent strategist. He not only possessed vast resources, but also had an extremely sharp business sense and insight into human nature. He taught me how to manipulate public opinion, how to steer narratives, and how to leak this dirt to the media bit by bit without exposing myself. And in this process, I also discovered a side of him unknown to others. Though he appeared cold on the outside, he was extremely attentive at heart. He remembered that I took my coffee without sugar, remembered that I liked to wash my hands before playing piano, and even remembered something I said on that rainy night. I want to see Impression sunrise. One early morning, he knocked on my door. "Let's go." "Where to?" "To see Impression sunrise." We climbed to the hilltop behind the manor. There was an abandoned lighthouse there with an excellent view. When the first rays of sunlight pierced through the clouds and scattered across the sea, I felt a peace I hadn't known in a long time. "You know what?" Adrian suddenly spoke. "I've also lost someone very important." I turned my head to look at him. My sister, the real Xiao Yan. He looked into the distance, a barely noticeable sadness in his eyes. "She went missing in a shipwreck 10 years ago. My mother also started getting sick around that time. I'm sorry." "No need to be sorry. Maybe this is fate." He turned his head, looking at me deeply. "Fate took away one Xiao Yan, but sent another. Nicole, thank you." At that moment, the morning light shone on his face, softening his originally stern features. My heart suddenly skipped a beat. Just then, my phone rang. It was an unfamiliar number, but I knew who it was. After I answered, my mother's shrill voice came from the other end. "Nicole, you little brat, where the hell have you been? Paul froze your trust fund and the nursing home said if you don't pay up soon, they're gonna kick me out. Get your ass back here and apologize to Paul right now." My good mood vanished in an instant. This is my mother. In her eyes, I was never a daughter, just an ATM that could get her into a fancy nursing home and let her show off in her socialite circles. "Then let them kick you out," I said coldly. "I'm no longer Mrs. Zhou, and I have no obligation to foot the bill for your vain retirement." "You! How dare you!" she shrieked hysterically on the other end of the phone. "If you don't come back, I'll expose you to the media. I'll tell the whole world that you're an unfilial daughter and a slut who was abandoned by a wealthy family." "Suit yourself." I hung up the phone and blocked him directly. Adrian looked at me, his brow slightly furrowed. "Need me to help?" "No need." I took a deep breath. This is my own mess. I have to clean it up myself. And I looked at a news notification pushed to my phone screen. Sofia's new film release date set. Paul Tech splurges to book entire theater in support. And the show has only just begun. That very afternoon, a post titled "America's Sweetheart or America's Con Artist," digging deep into Sofia's unknown past, quietly exploded across all major social media platforms. That post not only detailed evidence of Sofia faking her credentials and faking her depression, but also attached a blurry yet identifiable video from 2 years ago at a private party, where Sofia personally admitted how she had schemed to make Paul's ex-girlfriend back off. Public opinion erupted instantly. Paul Tech's PR department went crazy. They desperately deleted posts and sent lawyers letters, trying to suppress this wave of buzz. But with Adrian pulling strings behind the scenes, it was like trying to wrap fire with paper. It only burned fiercer. Meanwhile, I was sitting at the piano in the manor, playing that unfinished piece, Rebirth. Adrian leaned against the doorframe, holding a glass of red wine, listening quietly. "Ready?" he asked when the piece ended. "Ready for what?" "Get ready for your first battle." He raised his glass, saluting me. Paul's legal team is already on their way. This time, they're bringing more than just an agreement. They're bringing real threats. I closed the piano lid, stood up, and walked toward him. "Then let them come." I took the glass from his hand and drained it in one gulp. I'm no longer that Nicole who could only hide in the piano room and cry. Outside the window, waves crashed against the rocks, making a thunderous roar. The storm was finally coming. The thundering of waves against the rocks was like war drums, signaling there was no turning back from this confrontation. Paul's legal team arrived faster than I had imagined. 3 black Lincoln Navigators pulled into the estate like a funeral procession and parked in front of the main building. Leading the team was Richard Stone, New York's most notorious divorce lawyer. He was known for his dirty tactics, skilled at using victims' private matters as leverage to force the other party to leave with nothing. We met in the estate's high-ceilinged library. Adrian sat on the single sofa next to me, flipping through an antique copy of The Divine Comedy, not even sparing Richard a glance. "Ms. Nicole, according to the prenuptial agreement and your current behavior, including leaving home without permission, refusing to fulfill marital duties, and suspected—" Richard pushed up his gold, rimmed glasses, his gaze shifting suggestively between me and Adrian. "Suspected adultery during marriage. My client, Mr. Paul, has the right to freeze all assets under your name and sue you for damaging his reputation. Suspected adultery?" I laughed in disbelief, pushing the tablet full of evidence in front of him. "Mr. Stone, instead of making up stories here, why don't you take a look at these first? I think, compared to my trumped-up charges, what your client should be more worried about right now is the stock market avalanche that his America's sweetheart is about to bring him." Richard glanced at the screen, his expression shifting slightly. But he was an old fox after all, and quickly composed himself. "These so-called dirt. We have plenty of ways to spin it away. But you, Ms. Nicole, are you sure you want to give up everything you currently have for these baseless claims? The trust fund, social status, even your mother's safety?" When my mother was mentioned, my heart still couldn't help but ache. But I knew that was my last weakness, and also the rotting flesh that had to be cut away. "Mr. Stone, please pass this on to your client." I stood up, looking straight into his eyes. "I don't want his money, nor do I want his status. I only want one thing, freedom. If he won't give it, then I'll take it myself. As for my mother, if he dares touch a single hair on her head, I'll let the whole world know how the great tech mogul threatens his ex-wife using her mother." Richard's face finally darkened. He said nothing more, gathered the documents, and left with his people, slinking away. Adrian closed his book and looked at me. "The way you were just now, you looked a lot like me." "Really?" I rubbed my temples wearily, but my palms are all sweaty right now. That's normal, a side effect after the adrenaline spike. He poured me a glass of water. "But that move you just pulled, surviving by putting yourself in a desperate position, was beautifully done. Paul must be wondering right now just how many cards you still have up your sleeve." "Cards?" I smiled bitterly. "Besides what you've given me, I actually have nothing." "No, you do." Adrian pointed at my hand. "You have your talent. That's your greatest weapon. I've already contacted the person in charge at Carnegie Hall. They're very interested in your piece, Rebirth. If all goes well, you could hold your comeback premiere there next month. Carnegie Hall? That's the ultimate dream for all musicians. I had stood on that stage countless times in my dreams, yet never imagined this dream would come true at a moment like this. But in my current state, you're in great shape. Adrian interrupted me. Anger is the best fuel for creation. Nicole, don't waste your pain. Just then, my phone vibrated again. This time, it was a video call request from an unknown number. I hesitated for a moment, but still answered. On the screen appeared a heavily made-up face that couldn't hide its haggardness. Sofia. She seemed to be in a dressing room, the background noisy. She looked at me, her eyes venomous. Nicole, you think posting a few photos can bring me down? You're too naive. Tonight, I have a live talk show on NBC, and I'll let everyone know what kind of crazy woman you are, driven mad by jealousy. We'll see, I replied coldly and hung up directly. Looks like she's panicking, Adrian commented. A cornered dog will jump over the wall. I gripped my phone tightly. Then let's help her build that wall a little higher. That night, NBC's live talk show became the focus of attention across America. Sofia wore a white dress with light makeup, looking like an injured little white flower. She tearfully accused on the show, saying I was psychologically twisted because I couldn't have children, had been cyberbullying her for a long time, and even fabricated dirt to smear her. I really feel sorry for Sister Nicole. She wiped her tears in front of the camera. I know how painful it is for a woman to lose a child, but that can't be a reason to hurt others. The comment section exploded instantly. Countless netizens who didn't know the truth started flooding my social media accounts, cursing me with the most vicious language. Crazy woman. Can't have kids yourself, so you go harm others. You deserve to be dumped. How is someone like this worthy of playing piano? It's an absolute disgrace to art. Watching those malicious comments scrolling endlessly, I felt suffocated. Although I had mentally prepared myself long ago, when the malice really came crashing down like a tsunami, it was still overwhelming. Just when I was about to break down, a hand covered the back of mine. Adrian had sat down beside me at some point. He looked at the screen, his eyes cold. Don't look. It's all garbage. He took my phone, turned off the screen, and then took a USB drive out of his pocket and plugged it into the computer. What's this? The dashcam footage from that night at the Aspen cabin. He said casually, I tracked down the rescue company from back then and bought it at a high price. The video clearly recorded how Paul drove away and how you were abandoned in the blizzard. I looked at him in shock. I couldn't even keep evidence of this myself. Yet he actually... Don't ask me how I did it. He seemed to see through my thoughts. I told you, the Chen family's intelligence network never fails. Now, post this video right at the peak of Sofia's live stream. With trembling hands, I clicked the send button. The video caption had only one line. This is the so-called psychological distortion. The moment the video was posted, it was like a nuclear bomb detonating in the online world. The netizens who had been sympathizing with Sofia and cursing me were instantly silenced. The figure desperately calling for help in the blizzard, the pregnant woman heartlessly abandoned, and the sound of Paul and Sofia flirting and laughing from inside the car all became the sharpest slap, striking hard across the face of every keyboard warrior. Public opinion flipped instantly. Oh my God, this is basically murder. So the so-called sprained ankle was just to steal the car? They're absolute demons. Paul and Sofia must go to prison. Sofia's live stream hadn't even ended yet when the audience at the scene started getting restless. The host looked at the trending topics on their phone, their expression changing too. The heartwarming lines they had prepared got stuck in their throat, unable to come out. Sofia was still performing her heart out when she noticed something was off about the atmosphere around her. When she finally saw that video, she was struck like lightning, slumping into her chair, crying so hard even her fake eyelashes fell off. Meanwhile, Paul Tech's stock price triggered a circuit breaker in after-hours trading. I watched the woman breaking down on the screen, but there was no satisfaction like I had imagined, only a deep exhaustion. "Is it over?" I asked. "Not yet," Adrian said, closing his laptop. "This is just the beginning. Paul won't give up so easily. He's already mobilizing all his resources to suppress the information." Just as he expected, early the next morning, all the trending topics about the Aspen incident were taken down, replaced by a lawyer's statement issued by Paul Tech, claiming it was malicious editing and defamation. At the same time, my mother showed up again. This time, she didn't call. She brought a bunch of reporters and blocked the manor's entrance directly. She cried to the cameras about how unfilial I was, saying I made up lies to frame my husband just to get a share of the family fortune, and even knelt down in public, begging me to let Paul go. This scene was live-streamed, sparking another wave of public opinion warfare. I stood behind the second-floor window, watching that woman put on such a devoted performance in front of the cameras, and my heart turned completely cold. "Need me to have someone drive her away?" Adrian asked. "No need." I turned around and took out a yellow document from the drawer. Since she wants to put on a show so badly, I'll give her some extra scenes. It was the inheritance distribution document from 20 years ago, after my biological father passed away. It clearly recorded how my mother, in order to remarry my current stepfather, gave up custody of me, took all the inheritance, and dumped little me at a boarding school to fend for myself. I photographed the document and sent it to a few media friends I knew. Half an hour later, #VampireMother, #shot to the top of the trending list. Mother hadn't even finished her crying act in front of the cameras when she was rendered speechless by the reporters swarming around her with questions. She looked at the expose on her phone, her face turning from red to white, and finally pointed at the manor gates, cursing wildly without any regard for her image. This battle, I won. Yet I also lost. I won public opinion, but lost the last shred of family bond. That night, I sat alone on the rocks by the sea, spacing out to the sound of the waves. Adrian walked over and handed me a jacket. "Any regrets?" "No regrets." I pulled the jacket tighter around me. "It just feels a bit cold." "Then let's go back inside." He extended his hand. "There's still another battle to fight. The Carnegie performance is next week. You have to show up in your best condition." I looked at his outstretched hand. It was the only light in this cold night. I grabbed it without hesitation. Over the next few days, I shut myself in the practice room, practicing day and night. When my fingertips developed blood blisters, I wrapped them with tape and kept playing. Only in the sound of the piano could I forget all that chaos and find my true self again. Adrian came to listen to me play every day. He never disturbed me, just sat quietly to the side like a faithful guardian. Until the day before the performance, Paul suddenly appeared. He didn't bring a lawyer, nor did he bring Sofia. He drove alone and parked at the manor gates. He looked much more haggard, his chin covered in stubble, and that expensive haute couture suit was all wrinkled. "I want to talk to you," he said to me, his voice carrying an unprecedented plea. I looked at him through the iron gate. "If it's about the divorce agreement, talk to my lawyer." "No, it's about us." He took a deep breath. "Nicole, I know I was wrong. I've already terminated Sofia's contract, and that child... I regret it, too. Give me a chance. Let us start over, okay?" "Start over?" I looked at him, feeling utterly absurd. "Paul, do you think that as long as you apologize, I should gratefully come back to you? Do you think I can't live without you for the rest of my life?" "Isn't that so?" he said eagerly. "We have 5 years of history together. I have money, status. I can give you everything you want. What can that Adrian give you? He's just a useless man who only knows how to hide away in the countryside." "Useless?" I sneered. "He understands my music. understands my pain, and more importantly, he knows how to respect me. But you, Paul, you only love yourself. You've fallen in love with him? Paul's expression instantly turned vicious. You've actually fallen in love with a man you've known for less than a month? Nicole, you're utterly despicable. Slap! I slapped him across the face without hesitation. This was the second time I hit him, harder and more resolute than the first. This slap is for that dead child. I glared at him. Get lost. If I see you again, I'll call the police directly. Paul covered his face and looked at me in disbelief. He opened his mouth, seemingly wanting to say something, but in the end said nothing and turned to get in the car. Watching his fleeing figure, I let out a long sigh of relief. It was finally over. The next day, I stood on the stage of Carnegie Hall. The seats below were fully packed. The spotlight shone on me, and in that moment, I felt like I had returned to being that spirited young girl from 5 years ago. I took a deep breath and pressed the keys. Rebirth. Every note was like a fragment of my life, being pieced back together and fused in this moment. I played my pain, my anger, my despair, and my hope. When the piece ended, the entire hall fell silent. A moment later, applause erupted like thunder. I stood up and bowed to the audience. In the front row, I saw Adrian. He was watching me with a smile, tears glistening in his eyes. And beside him sat Mrs. Vance, dressed to the nines. She was waving a glow stick, shouting like a little fangirl, "That's my daughter! That's my little Yan!" I smiled. The tears finally couldn't be held back anymore. This time, they were tears of happiness. After the performance, the backstage was flooded with flowers. Reporters swarmed in, wanting to interview this goddess of vengeance. But I refused all interviews. I only wanted to do one thing. I changed out of my gown, put on casual clothes, and secretly slipped out the back door. Adrian's car was parked right there. "Where to?" he asked. "Home." I looked at him, my gaze firm. Back to our home in Bar Harbor. He smiled and started the car. The car drove into the night, heading toward the distant lighthouse. There were waves there, the sound of piano, and my future. The morning we returned to Bar Harbor from Carnegie Hall, the sea was as calm as a massive piece of jade. But I knew that hundreds of miles away in New York, a real slaughter was unfolding. Adrian placed a freshly toasted bagel in front of me and casually turned on the TV hanging on the kitchen wall. The financial news channel was scrolling breaking news. Tech giant Paul Technologies faces Black Friday. Board announces vote of no confidence against CEO Paul Wang. Stock plunges 20% at opening. The shot cut to the entrance of Paul Technologies building. The once spirited Paul was surrounded by countless cameras and microphones, his bodyguards having to roughly shove reporters aside. He looked like a cornered beast trapped in a cage, tie askew, dark circles under his eyes, that invincible mask finally shattering completely from exhaustion and fear. "Looks like your ex-husband is in big trouble." Adrian spread cream cheese, his tone as casual as if discussing the weather. "Not just trouble." I took a sip of black coffee, the bitter taste spreading across my tongue, yet making me feel incredibly clear-headed. The Federal Securities and Exchange Commission has gotten involved. Before I left, I sent a copy of the evidence you gave me about him cooking the books and inflating profits to the SEC's anonymous tip mailbox. Adrian's hand paused for a moment, then he broke into an appreciative smile. "Nicely done. I thought you'd go soft." "Go soft?" I sneered. When he left me stranded on that blizzard night, when he ignored my miscarriage for Sofia's fake depression, my heart already died. Now, I just want to take back everything that belongs to me. The phone buzzed on the table. It was Richard Stone, Paul's scumbag lawyer. I pressed speakerphone. "Ms. Nicole." Richard's voice was no longer as arrogant as it had been that day in the study. Instead, it carried a sense of urgency and eagerness to please. "Regarding the divorce agreement, Mr. Paul has agreed. He's willing to pay $20 million in alimony and give you the Manhattan apartment. As long as you can publicly issue a statement saying those whistleblower materials were a misunderstanding and this is just an internal family dispute. 20 million? Manhattan apartment? If it were before, this would indeed be a huge sum. But now, it sounds more like hush money or begging money. Mr. Stone, aren't you mistaken about something? I said slowly. What I want now isn't alimony. What I want is the division of marital assets. According to my calculations, the assets Paul transferred during our marriage, the mansion and jewelry he bought for Sofia, and those illegal financing deals he conducted in my name, all of that adds up to far more than this amount. Richard obviously didn't expect me to be this difficult to deal with. Paul's situation is really bad right now. If you push him too far, nobody's going to have a good time. And don't forget, your mother is still in our hands. Oh, you mean Miss Linda? I interrupted him. I regret to inform you that just half an hour ago, people from the IRS already went to that upscale nursing home. Regarding the matter of her running off with my biological father's inheritance 20 years ago without declaring estate taxes, I think she's probably busy explaining things to federal agents right now. No time to play along with your little act. The other end of the phone fell into a deathly silence. This is American law. Cold, but sometimes extremely fair. As long as you find the right angle, nobody is untouchable. Tell Paul, I said into the phone, enunciating every single word. Don't even think about brushing me off with money. I want to watch him cough up every single penny that doesn't belong to him in court. I want to watch the business empire he's so proud of crumble because of his greed and stupidity. After saying that, I hung up the phone directly. Adrian looked at me, a complex gleam flickering in his eyes. You're even more ruthless than I imagined, but I like it. In this dog-eat-dog world, if you're not ruthless, you'll only get eaten. I stood up and walked to the window. By the way, how are things going with Sofia? Oh, that America's sweetheart? Adrian sneered. Her situation is way more spectacular than Paul's now. Brands are terminating contracts one after another and demanding astronomical breach of contract penalties from her. I heard she's been hawking those Hermes bags and jewelry Paul gave her to pay off her debts. The most ironic part is she posted a little essay on social media yesterday, claiming she was a victim of Paul's psychological manipulation, PUA, trying to whitewash herself as an innocent little lamb. Dogs biting dogs, I commented. Exactly. Paul went absolutely insane after seeing that little essay, reportedly smashed everything in his office, and threatened to expose all the chat logs of Sofia seducing him back then. I gazed at the calm sea outside the window, yet felt not a single ripple in my heart. The two people who once made me wish I was dead were now tearing at each other in the mud, making complete fools of themselves. And I had already become a spectator on the shore. This was just the first step. What I wanted wasn't merely their total disgrace. What I wanted was a complete reckoning. A few days later, I received a court summons. To buy himself time, Paul had actually countersued me for invasion of privacy and theft of trade secrets. The next time I saw Paul was at the family court in New York. In just half a month since I last saw him, he seemed to have aged 10 years. That once crisp haute couture suit now hung loosely on his frame, his eye sockets sunken, stubble unkempt. When he saw me walk in, a flicker of complex emotions passed through his eyes, anger, unwillingness, and a hint of regret hidden deep within. As for me, I wore a white wool suit that Mrs. Vance had personally sewn for me, my makeup impeccable, looking radiant. Adrian accompanied me as my legal counsel, his hand hovering at my waist in a protective gesture. Nicole. During a break in the trial, Paul stopped me in the corridor. His voice was terribly hoarse, as if it had been worn down by sandpaper. Step aside. Adrian blocked in front of me, looking at him coldly. I want to speak to my wife alone." Paul stared at me intently, a hint of pleading in his eyes. Just a few words. I patted Adrian's arm, signaling that it was okay. "Go ahead." I looked at this man I once shared a bed with, feeling nothing but emptiness inside. "Are you really going to destroy me?" Paul asked, trembling. "Even for revenge, you'd drag me down to hell? Do you know what I'll face once the SEC convicts me? It's not just bankruptcy, but prison." "That's a consequence you brought upon yourself." I said calmly, "Paul, when you were falsifying accounts for stock prices, when you were transferring assets for your own selfish desires, you should have known this day would come. I'm just the one who lifted the lid, not the one who created the garbage." "But I love you." He suddenly became agitated, trying to grab my hand. "These 5 years, even though I made mistakes, my feelings for you were real. I bought you the best piano, let you live in the best house." "You only love yourself." I stepped back, avoiding his touch. What you loved was that obedient, sensible pianist wife who could make you look good. The moment I stopped being obedient, the moment I couldn't satisfy your vanity anymore, you would throw me away like garbage without hesitation. Just like that day in Aspen, what you threw away wasn't just me, but your humanity. Paul froze. He looked at me, and tears suddenly started flowing down. What if we hadn't gone to Aspen?" he asked, choking up. "If we had that child, would everything have been different?" "There are no what ifs." I looked at him coldly. "Paul, there's no medicine for regret in this world. Besides, even without Aspen, there would have been something else. Your selfishness is ingrained in your bones. Sofia was just a trigger. Even without her, there would have been Anna, Maria. We were destined to end up here. Just sign it." I pointed at the documents in the lawyer's hands. "Leave yourself a last shred of dignity." Paul looked at me, the light in his eyes fading bit by bit. He finally understood that the girl who once had eyes only for him had completely died on that blizzard night. With trembling hands, he picked up the pen and signed his name on the divorce agreement. The moment he finished signing, it was as if all his strength had been drained, and he slumped onto the bench. "Nicole." As I turned to leave, he said softly from behind, "I'm sorry." I didn't stop. Belated affection is cheaper than weeds. Walking out of the courthouse, the New York sun was so bright I could barely keep my eyes open. Adrian opened an umbrella, shading me from above. "It's over?" he asked. "No." I looked at Sofia not far away, being swarmed by reporters. She had just been taken away by police for questioning on fraud charges. There's one more. Sofia saw me. She tried to rush over like a madwoman but was held back by the police. "Nicole, you bitch! You ruined me! It was you!" she shrieked hysterically, no longer resembling the America's sweetheart she once was, but rather a common, vulgar shrew. I walked up to her, and across the police line, I gave her a faint smile. "Sofia, I didn't ruin you," I said softly. "You were just too greedy. You wanted shortcuts, wanted to take what belonged to others, and in the end, you could only crash and burn. Enjoy your prison life. There are no flashbulbs there, and no foolish men to foot your bills." After saying that, I took Adrian's arm and strode away from this Vanity Fair filled with lies and betrayal. Getting into the car, I let out a long sigh of relief. "Tired?" Adrian handed me a bottle of water. "A little." I leaned back against the seat. But more than that, I feel relieved. It feels like I'd been holding my breath underwater for 5 years and finally came up for air. That's good. He started the car. "Let's go. I'll take you somewhere." "Where?" "To celebrate your new life." He smiled mysteriously. The car headed toward the airport. There, Mrs. Vance was waiting for us. We were going back to Bar Harbor. At that moment, watching the skyscrapers rapidly receding outside the window, I had only one thought. Goodbye, New York. Goodbye, the old Nicole. Winter came early in Bar Harbor. When the first snow fell, the fireplace in the manor was already burning with an orange-red glow. Life with Adrian returned to peace. Without New York's hustle and bustle, days slowed down. I started trying to compose new pieces, no longer that intense catharsis, but more peaceful, embracing melodies. Mrs. Vance's condition stabilized with medication and companionship. She even learned to play simple four-hand duets with me. However, this piece didn't last long. A month later, late one night, Adrian received a call from the New York police. After hanging up, his expression was somewhat grave. "What's wrong?" I put down the book in my hand, a vague sense of foreboding rising in my heart. "Paul is dead." I froze. The book slipped from my hand onto the carpet, making a muffled thud. "Dead?" I repeated, my voice somewhat hoarse. "How did he die?" "Car accident." Adrian walked over to me, sat down, and held my ice-cold hands. On the Long Island Expressway, the police's preliminary finding is drunk driving plus drug driving. He was driving that red Ferrari, going over 180 miles per hour, crashed straight into the guardrail, the car caught fire and exploded, and he was right there on the spot. He didn't continue, but I could imagine that gruesome scene. That was Paul's favorite car and the trophy he was most proud of. He once said it was a symbol of speed and passion, proof of his control over everything. But in the end, that car became his coffin. I thought I would cry or feel relieved. But strangely, I felt nothing inside. It was like hearing about a stranger's death, just a dazed sense of, "Oh, so that's how it is." This is probably karma. After a long while, I finally found my voice again. The police found a lot of empty liquor bottles and antidepressants in his apartment. Adrian said in a low voice, "Ever since he was kicked off the board, his mental state has been very poor. Sofia confessed a lot of his non-compliant business dealings to the police in exchange for a reduced sentence, and that became the last straw that broke him. He was abandoned by everyone, and in the end, he chose this way to end it." I closed my eyes, and the image of the last time I saw him outside the courthouse surfaced in my mind. That man who was once so arrogant was ultimately consumed by his own desires. "Do you need me to go to New York?" I asked. "No need. You're already divorced. There's no legal relationship whatsoever. His funeral affairs will be handled by the family trust. Although there's not much left, it's enough to take care of the arrangements." Adrian paused. "But I'm worried about you." "I'm fine." I opened my eyes, watching the dancing flames in the fireplace. "Really, I just feel a bit wistful. 5 years ago, I thought he was my whole world. Now that world has completely collapsed, yet I'm still alive. Because you rebuilt your own world." Adrian pulled me into his arms, resting his chin on top of my head. "Nicole, you're stronger than anyone." Just then, my phone rang. It was a missed call notification. The time shown was an hour ago, just minutes before the car accident happened. The number was unfamiliar, but my gut told me it was from Paul. What did he want to say to me in the end? Was it repentance? A curse? Or that unasked question, what if we hadn't gone to Aspen? I'll never know, but I don't want to know anymore either. That answer, with his death, has become completely meaningless. "Delete it," I said to Adrian and also to myself. I pressed the delete button. Along with that number and that unbearable past, all wiped clean. The next day, I went for my usual walk by the sea. The beach after the snow was pure white, with only a few seagulls circling low in the sky. Facing the sea, I said softly, "Goodbye, Paul." That was my final farewell to him, and also a tribute to my own absurd youth. When I returned to the manor, Mrs. Vance was sitting at the piano, clumsily tapping the keys. Seeing me come back, she held up a painting, like presenting a treasure. "Xiao Yan, look, Mommy drew this." There were 3 people in the painting, an old woman, a young man, and a girl playing the piano. The background was the sea and impression, sunrise with warm and bright tones. This is our family. She pointed at the people in the painting and said, "Together forever." I looked at that painting, my eyes a little moist. Yes, this is my home. Not that cold Manhattan apartment, not that scheming world of fame and fortune, but here, with a warm fireplace, clumsy paintings, and a man who understands me and loves me. Adrian walked over and hugged me from behind. "Do you like it?" "I do." I turned around and hugged him back. "Adrian, thank you for giving me a home." "No, it's you who made this family complete." He kissed my forehead. "Are you ready?" "Carnegie sent a new invitation. They're hoping you can go on tour. This time, it's not just Rebirth, but also Little Yan." I looked at him, at the reflection in his eyes. It was a brand new Nicole, confident, composed, with light in her eyes. "Ready," I said with a smile. "But before that, I want to play a piece for you first." "What piece?" "Impression, Sunrise." I walked to the piano and sat down, my fingertips lightly touching the keys. Dedicated to everyone who has walked out of the darkness. The piano sounded, melodious and full of power. Outside the window, the sun broke through the clouds, casting countless rays of golden light. A new life had begun.